And welcome back to the Sideline Chat podcast. Now, there is no Betfred Super League action on this week. Fear not, because there's international footy on. How good is that? International football in the run-up to the 2022 Rugby League World Cup in October. Now, before we dive in any more into that, we've got England versus the Combined Nations All-Stars to take place by Australian time at 2:45 via Fox League on Sky Sport. Well, it's the Combined Nations All-Stars going into its second year, and let's have a look at Ellery Hanley's squad that he has named for this. Of course, we've got Daryl Clark, Brodie Croft, Kenny Edwards, Mahe Fanua, Sean Kenny-Dowell, the Hull KR skipper, Samisoni Langi, Cruz Leeming, Joe Lavadua, Reece Martin, Peter Matalia, Manu Ma'u, Jacob Miller, Matt Parcell, Matt Pryor, Liggy Sow, Chris Sarte, the Salford try-scoring whiz Ken Sio, Kalepe Tanganoa, and Zane Tetevano from the Leeds Rhinos. And that is the squad name by Ellery Hanley. Of course, he is missing a couple of players as well. There is no Jake Connor whatsoever because he's been ruled out through injury. So there's a big loss for them. Big inclusion in Daryl Clark. Of course, he is eligible to represent Scotland as well. This 19-man squad will be going up against Sean Wayne's England squad for his third match in charge. And of course, there are a couple of surprises, but really none at all, depending on who you support, whether you're Saints or Wigan. Matty Ashton up from the Warrington Wolves. Saints Joe Batchelor, the Wigan, and then future Wigan pairing of John Bateman and Mike Cooper. Also Liam Farrell, Ryan Hall, Matty Lees, Michael McAlorum, and Mike McMeekin from the Catalan Dragons. Paul McShay, and Tommy Makinson, Mikolai Ledsky, Joe Philbin, Steph Bratchford, Sam Tompkins the skipper, Alex Walmsley, the best front rower in the world, Jake Wardle, Callum Watkins from Salford, Jack Wellesby, and George Williams. A couple of questionable inclusions, I would say. The Warrington duo, Widdop and Williams, especially where you look at the Warrington Wolves on the table at the moment. I mean, do you really trust Sean Wayne to get the best out of Gareth Widdop and George Williams at this point in time? Now, of course, the last time these two sides met, it was a narrow 26-24 victory to the Combined Nations All-Stars. Now, let's see what's going to happen here. These aren't the final sides. They're going to be running out on paper. Only a couple of hours in the UK, if you are watching this at the moment. Reasonably so. Both sides looked strong on paper, of course. Also, Mark's mentioned that. It's just a matter of who's going to get the better start and question of combinations. Well, I'm looking at both of these sides at the moment. They had the Combined Nations All-Stars last year, plus England had a second test match against France, who we'll get onto in just a moment. They also had benefit of combinations in that game. Makinson, Bateman, Williams was there, playing a lot better, I'd admit. Of course, the man of steel at that point in time in Sam Tompkins. Oh no, wasn't there, that's right. Just resting after the grand final. But there are some interesting names here. Jack Wellesby, Matty Ashton. He'll definitely be competing up against a veteran name in Ryan Hall, all from Hull KR. Interesting to go with McAlorum over Daryl Clark, but I suppose with Ireland not playing any international fixtures this weekend, instead of they've got a training camp set up, I suppose. The post James Roby, Josh Hodgson era is already here for England, so I suppose that's one way of looking at it. Other than that, no real surprises. All the Saints contingent, Knowles, Makinson, and named. Oh no, not Morgan Knowles. Yeah, no Morgan Knowles. That's my bad. Ad right there. But Tommy Makinson, Alex Walmsley, Jack Wellesby. He'll be pushing for a debut. Nothing surer. Aledzki, either Polish or an Englishman. Nothing wrong with that whatsoever. But the Warrington players, that is what really is raised my attention. Now, and that's the same story over with Ellery Hanley's All-Stars side right here. The captain for this will be Sean Kenny-Dowell. Now, this is really going to be interesting right here. Players whose clubs have had differing fortunes, to say the least, right here. Here, of course, 8 Super League clubs represented, so that means 8 sets of players having to get used to all combinations. Of course, Castleford, Salford, Warrington, Hull KR, Catalan, Leeds, and Wakefield Trinity. All represented here, both sides of Hull, all to say the least. Now, final prediction. Well, Mark has already sort of indicated that it will be the two things of combinations and who gets the better start out of way. He's already said the All-Stars to go out 7 to 12 winners. I'm going to have to dissent again. That's that right there. Whilst the Combined Nations All-Stars has some very talented players on paper, combinations are a big thing. And the overall forward pack strength for the English side is what really seals this for me. Because regardless of whether you have Widdop Williams or Jack Wellsby thrown into the halves with Sam Tompkins playing fullback, there are combinations and an overall strength that I think England will get the upper hand early, and if Williams can somehow pull something out of the fight with this as well, the Warrington halves, I see no reason why not England can avenge last year's horror show performance. So, of course, Mark said the All-Stars to win by 7 points to 12. I'm going to say, off the back of the forward pack strength alone, England to win 1 to 6. But that's not the only international fixture that's going on this weekend, because we also have France against Wales to play local time. I'm in Albi. And of course, there is no surprise for Laurent Fresinu. But before we get out onto the French side, we also have to factor in that Wales have also been named by former Bradford coach John Keir. The squad for that, it's Bailey Antrobus, Joe Burke, Chester Butler, Michael Butt, Connor and Curtis Davies, both from Workington, Will Evans, Ben Evans, Kyle Evans. Is it me, or does the Welsh like naming their sons under the surname of Evans? Maybe just me. Jude Ferreira from the London Broncos, Matty Fozzard, Dalton Grant, Kobe Green, Tom Hopkins, Lewis Holm, Elliot Keir, Owen Restall, Lewis Roberts, Luke Thomas, Anthony Walker, and Reece Williams, the Salford Fly. Though he's, of course, found himself on the outer down there. Now, Alpha France. No surprises. It's virtually a Catalan-Toulouse 13 in combined side, with a bit of Halifax and Salford sprinkled into this as well. Julian Bousquet, Alex da Costa, Jordan Desaria, Morgan Escaray, Ben Garcia, Mikhail Goudemont, Benjamin Julien, Mathieu Laguerre. How good has he been going? Paul Macron, Anthony Marion, Arthur Morgue, Romain Navarrete, and Eloy Pellissier, Arthur Romano, Cesar Rouge, Justin Sangare, Paul Seguer, Maxime Stefani, Louis Jouffre, and of course Catalan's greatest ever try scorer in Fuhad Yaha. Well, combinations were a big thing before. Now let's talk about experience, as Mark also notes right here. It's not looking good for Wales with 14 uncapped players and not a lot of experienced players from the top flight. Of course, the only members of Wales' squad that have had top flight experience: Reece Williams, Anthony Walker, Elliot Keir, Matty Fozzard, of course. Also, there's not a lot of experienced top flight Welsh talent. Of course, you could argue Regan Grace, but I don't know why he hasn't been named, but I suppose at the same time he has only been back from injury as of late. So maybe at the World Cup we will see Regan Grace, maybe a couple of others. Apparently Harry Smith could have been named as well. Rather interesting when you think about it. But we will see how things pan out. But this is shaping up to be another one-sided affair, as Love Rugby League's Gordon Oates over here. It went and writing about out front. They last met back in 2018 October at Carcassonne, with France running out 54 to 18 winners. Of course, their last Test match was 30 to 10 defeat at the hands of England, but boy, did they show spirit in the second half. No Tony Gigo or Mark Corella for this one, with their eligibility brought into question. Of course, Gigo on the outer with Toulouse, having been replaced with Ollie Ashelbot, whilst of course Featherstone fullback Mark Corella left Toulouse in, well, really, in unceremonious circumstances, to say the least. So there is a question of what happens with those two right there. France have got, Mark reckons plenty of experience as well. Well, there's some veterans like Fouad Yaha, Ben Garcia, Mikhail Goudamont, to name a few. But I really think there is more opportunities with the French players. Of course, this is sort of the dynamic at the back end of 2021 when you had the Catalan Dragons in the grand final and Toulouse winning the £1 million game. There is somewhere, pathways, where young French players in the south, maybe even in the north, or around Cherbourg, Paris, and other places, that they can play rugby league at the international level. And because of this absolute achievement, you got the likes of Corentin Lecam, César Rouge. Well, of course, Lecam not been named in the squad, or by Laurent Fressignou, the French coach. But still, Arthur Omorg, César Rouge. There is some talent here that came off the back of the Catalan Dragons' great 2021 campaign and Toulouse's rise to the top. But at the end of the day, there's got to be someone who has to win in this right here. Mark's calling it a France 13-plus victory. I have to agree with him. I think France will win this one by 13 points or greater. Well, that's all the international footy out of the way, so it's time for a week in review. We have the results from round 15 of the Betfred Super League, and we do start off with Huddersfield downing the Leeds Rhinos 30 points to 16. Wow, what about the start from the Huddersfield Giants? I mean, blown my mind seeing Huddersfield just absolutely turn it on in the opening 40 minutes. They had Leeds on the back rope from the word go. Now, Ricky Latelli's try, that awkward kick from Jake Wardle. How did he manage to pull it off? And secondly, how is that not a knock-on under any circumstances? We'll never know. I honestly think we won't find out more about that. And then, this long-range intercept try from Chris McQueen continues to impress. And they're 20 minutes in, and the game's almost over. You might as well have thrown in the towel. 26 minutes in, but of course they did let Leeds get in, and then they put in another 2 tries off the back of that. It could have been like that, but Josh Jones, once he goes over, he practically put the result to bed for the Huddersfield Giants. I gotta say, Jake Wardle himself, I thought he was a standout. It was between him and Ricky Latelli, but one centre is better than another. I reckon they both had good games. One try assist, 127 running meters, and 2 line breaks. And as Mark noted, Huddersfield controlled the match, and the way they started was really unbelievable. Or to apply the pressure, and even when it got tough in the second half, when the Leeds Rhinos found a way to put 2 tries on the board, it was just like, nope. You're not coming away with this one. But poor result from the Leeds Rhinos. I think they gave away a big 4-try lead that they struggled to come back from, and they just didn't apply any real pressure. Their edges got opened up on both sides. Some beautiful ball, not just for Jake Wardle, but for Jermaine McGilvery as well. Talk about out your veteran try scorers putting on a clinic. I'm sorry, that was just an absolute clinic right there. Just absolute perfection, and especially considering Will Price, you got him making up the lost time as well. 5 from 8 goals converted right there, making up for lost time, and really with no Theo Farge as the marquee signing. Once again, Huddersfield, this rise to the top they have had under Ian Watson, especially now in Season 2, there's just no real ill opposition to Huddersfield at the moment. Of course, they haven't played Wigan since Tottenham. They haven't played the Saints yet, so those results are yet to be determined. But if Leeds to face the reigning champions very soon, within the next couple of weeks, it's 2 weeks. It's right there. It is not looking good. Of course, Huddersfield's next match will be against Hull KR at the Sewell Group Craven Park, and that game will be shown on Sky Sports. Now, from up north of Yorkshire, we go down to Greater Manchester, where the Salford Red Devils got cleaned up by the Wigan Warriors. It is just amazing to watch the Wigan Warriors at this point. It is just an absolute treat to watch Wigan in full flight. There's just nothing else for. Alright, right here. You literally had two of the fastest men playing the same position. They were just interchanging position. Whether you had Field at fullback, then it was French, and then you swapped it around. But the long-range tries, they really hurt the Salford Red Devils. The long-range efforts off the back of efforts from Field and French, capitalising on Salford ill-discipline, that really rocked them hard. It was just an avalanche of cherry and white everywhere you look. Oh, then Salford, they let that game go. The most embarrassing part of it was 6-0 at the break. They only managed one try in the first half, and then they piled on 5 in the second half. That is just not up to first grade standard. And it right there. It simply is not. Of course, no Wigan side is complete without Liam Marshall going over. And then it was just a simple avalanche of Wigan Warriors tries from ill discipline and Salford players. They were probably lucky that they even got those 2 tries on the board at the back end of the game. First Dion Cross, and then for Callum Watkins to go over. But just an absolute clinic from the Wigan Warriors. Now, standout player. I could have named them both, but I've gone with one, and that was Bevan French. 3 tries, 199 running meters, 10 tackle breaks, and 2 line breaks. And Marcus supports me on that. He had a ripper of a game, and his combination with Jai Field is just getting better as the season wears on, which will benefit Wigan's run into the playoffs. Well, if they continue to run at second, a home semi-final beckons for them. As Mark also referred us to, this result was to be expected. They were lucky that Salford are away from getting relegated at this stage, but anything can happen. But their defensive line is the biggest issue at the at the rate. And we're going to remember, half of those tries were long-range efforts from Jai Field and Bevan French, which makes it absolutely embarrassing. I would not want to be a Salford supporter, so sorry, Mark, I wouldn't want to be you at the moment. But Wigan, with Huddersfield breathing down their neck, another strong result for them, and that will really help the differential come early September. Now, speaking of French sides and not French players, the Catalan Dragons downing Hull FC 36 points to 8. Can Hull go 3 weeks without doing the Jekyll and Hyde? Because, quite frankly, I don't think they can. Not one whatsoever. Maybe a couple of weeks back, but they had playoffs in the grasp and then they let it slip, which is just, I don't know what's going wrong with Hull FC. They had Reynolds there, they had Luke Gale back, of course, Jake Connor, a big ready-made replacement in Jamie Shaw, and then the Catalan Dragons, and just absolutely said, hey, you know what? You'll come to our home here at the Stars Gilbert Brutus and Papillon. You think you can play the big-time rugby we do? Oh, here where we try and get close to the mighty Red B of the Saints. Oh, you all got another thing coming, messieurs. And it was. They had another thing coming, Hull FC, as Catalan just tore them limb from limb. Soft edge and, well, really it was soft middle defense from the Black and Whites. Mitchell Pearce having a blinder. 1 try, 3 try assists, 40 run meters, and 2 off. But yeah, Hull were very lucky to get those 2 tries, as Mark pointed out. Catalan at home were very hard to beat. But nothing went right for Holocene with the little ball they did got, with the inconsistency plaguing them so hard. And with 3 months until the playoffs happen, and the race for the top 6 is starting to tighten up. Something needs to change at Holocene. Does Brett Hodgson need to change? Is it personnel need to change? Well, of course, they're getting Jake Truman in 2023, so already Luke Gale's head is on the chopping block. What about Josh Reynolds? He's one of these marquee overseas players right here. So, what gives? As for Catalan, I would probably think right edge defense needs to tighten up a little bit. While they forced Hull wide, their edge defense let them down at the back end of that game. And despite the fact they had 6 tries piled up on the board, maybe more depending on the standard of the goal kicking. But hey, it's Sam Tompkins we're talking about, the England captain right here. Now, speaking of inconsistency, or just at this point playing bad, Wakefield Trinity downing the Warrington Wolves 30 points to 24. Well, boys, the lads from West Yorkshire did it again. They condemned the Warrington Wolves not just to 3 straight losses against them, but to 5 straight league losses. My God, how I'm regretting picking Warrington to be the league leaders and to be my champions so much. I mean, like I said, I had valid reason to think that St. Helens couldn't match the same standards, no matter how much they tried to match the same standards they set for themselves across 2019, 2020, and last year. Third at best to Catalan Dragons second, Warrington first, as we recall. Or if you recall, I should say. But here we are, almost 4 months in, and Saints are at the top, once again, looking near invulnerable, even with the players they're missing, such as Lewis Dodd, for instance. It's ruled out for the rest of the year. James Roby on his final season in the Super League, a brilliant servant of the game. We'll touch more on him shortly. But for Warrington to have upwards of 5 players this weekend representing England and the Combined Nations All-Stars, from the likes of Mataudier to Philbin to Clark, Darrell that is, Winnip, Williams, Ashton and Ratchford. I expect the Warrington Wolves to be playing a lot better. They got dragged into this fight against Wakefield, and Trinity, to their credit, the back rowers were on song with this one. James Batchelor, in particular, 2 tries, 107 run meters, and 4 tackle breaks. It was the forwards of Wakefield that kept them in the game against the Wolves. All's right here. That's all there is to it. David Fafita, Jay Pitts, of course, who also bagged the try for Willie Poaching's side. And I just think the scores were locked at 24 all after Warrington thought they had won the game, but they let James Batchelor go through for a double, almost unopposed. The right edge let Manny Ashton in. Liam Hood died from dummy half, for God's sake. How many times are you going to let a fall for not being square at marker and letting the dummy half loose? I just cannot believe this. And then the good pressure to wrap Connor Wrench up. When Warrington, I think it was either a 24 all or 18 all, tried to come up with the game-winning play, and they just gave it away. They lost the ball after George Williams put, I think it was either Wrench or Fewless in the space. That was just plain embarrassing. I have no words for this Warrington side at the moment. Let's just go through the names. I already rattled off some of them at the moment. But this Warrington Wolves side, under Darrell Powell, who took the Casper Tigers to Old Trafford. Ratchford, England International. Toby King, England International. Gareth Widdop, George Williams, Joe Philbin, Darrell Clark, Mike Cooper. All of these players here, including Ben Curry, Ollie Holmes, have all played for England. Robbie Noelhern, there's another international right there. So you've got, in the 17, almost half of them who are international players at best. and they still couldn't beat Wakefield. I've no faith in the Warrington Wolves. If they manage to stay above the relegation threshold, to which unfortunately Toulouse is still anchored to the bottom of, I don't know. I really have no clue how they're going to survive that at one right there. Now, speaking of actual sides with a lot of England stars, but actually play good, the St. Helens and downing Hull KR 26 points to 18. Well, Saints, what about Saints? Another win. Another one, as Drake would put it. But just absolute first-class performance. The right edge, Jack Wellesby, Tommy Makinson, Conrad Harold, they tormented Hull KR all afternoon. All afternoon, I think it wasn't an easy win, but Saints were able to finish that one off, as Mark noted. The Robins finding a way to fight back, but when all was said and done, the Saints just managed to hang on with their absolute first-class defense. James Roby, game 455, Ivan Super League. The record is for this absolute champion. Of course, he brought up 500 games for St. Helens not too long ago. Just an absolute champion right here. And it showed for Orem in this record-breaking game. 1 try, 70 run meters, 3 tackle breaks, and 2 offloads as he commanded the Saints to victory, even when he wasn't on the field late into the game. It's just a joy to watch St. Helens play. Now, this is probably, if I had to revise my grand final predictions right now, I would 100% say St. Helens will be there, and it's either up to the Wigan Warriors or the Catalan Dragons to come take it. And of course, Lachlan Coots back at Saints again, and had I'd say, probably a cold welcome, but put in a strong performance. And it's in front of his old home crowd right there. Of course, Matty Parcell, big thing for him to be sin bin a minute from half-time. And of course, the Saints put on 2 tries in his absence right there. 1 for Ben Davis, and not long after that, Conrad Hurrell broke into the clear to go over down the right-hand corridor. But of course, Lachlan Coote, who had the final save for the Robins after he put... did he put Ryan Hall over? Probably what? Was it? Oh, no, he put Ryan Hall over as well, so... they let the game slip at the back end, St. Helens, which final 5 minutes you don't want to do. But another impressive result for the Saints, I would say, right then and there. And another win. That's really, looking at this St. Helens side, odds-on favourites justifiably to go 4 in a row, to become the first English side. I know there's still 3 months left in the season, but at 13-2, with the second best attack behind the Wigan Warriors and the best defence in the league, conceding less than 160 points, where the average is currently 200, that is just impressive. You can't even be mad at that. I'm sorry, you just can't be mad at that. Just for the best defence by a measure, a country mile, you would have to say. Right here, with only 2 losses to their name. Impressive. And finally, from round 15 of the Betfred Super League, it was, of course, unfortunately, Toulouse Olympique going down once again to the Castleford Tigers, 20 points to 14. Oh, man. That's rough. The way they lost that game, they were locked at 14 all with about 20 minutes to go. And then Mahe Fanua was just like, oh, you know what? I'm going to do some magic here off the back of my captain, Paul McShane, and who really, a mountain of work, 29 run meters, 3 try assists to his name, so having his hand in every single try for Cass, and 50 tackles. The bloke made 50 tackles playing at dummy half. That is just outstanding. That unbelievable work ethic from one of the game's top dummy halves. And of course, Castleford backed up against Salford after loss. In saying that, though, they still had a fair bit of work to do to win this game against a continuously improving Toulouse Olympique side. But 3 points adrift of Wakefield and the Warrington Wolves, I'm sorry to say, it's not looking good for them. It genuinely isn't looking good for them. Their right edge did get opened up by Mahe Fanua. They allowed George Griffin to crash both George Griffin and Siwa Matangi to crash over at close range, so their middle defense needs to tighten up hard. You take those 2 tries out of the equation, if they can improve goal line defense, they got Castlewood going into extra time right here. Is there still time for Toulouse? Well, of course there's still time. There's still 3 months left in the campaign. But I tell you what, Corey Norman needs to step up here. 3 tackle breaks, 1 try assist, 2 offloads. That's decent for a standoff. But there needs to be a huge collective push before the end of the year. And with all the players that they got up, I don't want Toulouse to go down. And this is sort of an argument Sky Sports pundit Barry McDermott's sort of argued online. He reckons Toulouse Olympique should be exempt from relegation. He thinks they should not be relegated come the end of the year, despite being 3 wins adrift of Wakefield and Salford, and really the Warrington Wolves at this point. With 3 months and 12 rounds still to play, I would love to see Toulouse, who's somehow pull off what I think many would regard as the impossible at this point in time, as we enter the back straits of this. But their draw is not kind to them whatsoever. Wigan Warriors in round 16 at the DW Stadium. And then they've got Hull KR at home. They travel to Magic Weekend at Newcastle to face Toulouse. Then it's Leeds, Salford, Hull FC. They might be lucky to pick up their 3rd win. Salford, I'm not too sure about. Hull KR, Warrington, Wigan again, Catalan, and at home, Hull FC before travelling to face the champions, excuse me, at the Totally Wicked Stadium for the final game of the season. So Toulouse, they spend the final fortnight on the road. That's criminal. They should have at least had the benefit of playing in front of their home faithful for one last time. Instead, they'll be robbed of that 2 weeks before the end of the campaign. But the next month ahead, Hull KR, Wakefield, Leeds, and Salford. So maybe not against the Robins. Wakefield, a 50-50. I would have to actually, now thinking about it and looking at this, I would give them a fair crack at Leeds at the moment, just looking at it. Of course, injury suspensions play a huge role into that, but positive signs with Toulouse, their left edge. Chris Hankinson, Matty Russell, a very effective combination between those 2 right there. And one more thing before we wrap up today, it's just a quick short one with all the international footy on. A shout out to the Leeds Rhinos outside back Jet Broadbent for giving our absent host Mark Henry a follow on Instagram. How did you find us? Well, we don't know, but if he is watching, good on you, mate. Hopefully, if you want to come on to chat about everything Leeds eats at the moment, our door's open until you. Hopefully, we can get something arranged. But on that note, it is full time from us here at the Sideline Chat. If you enjoyed this part or the NRL debrief we did yesterday, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the chat, and click that bell to ring the notifications bell so you never miss a week of rugby league. Don't forget to follow us on social media, on Facebook and on Instagram. It is Sideline Chat, and on Twitter it is Sideline Chat RL. Hope you enjoy England and France going at it at the weekend against the All-Stars and the Welsh. And of course the NRL is on as well. Just Conor Marcel's with you, and on behalf with Mark Henry, still suffering from concussion at this point. I know it's unbelievable. He will be back on deck hopefully soon. We'll just have to wait and see what the club doctors have to say about that, or studio doctors, I should say. But you have been listening to the Sideline Chat podcast, and we'll see you next week.